Hey guys, Dozer here bringing you a new video. Today we're going to be talking about the next banned and restricted announcement releasing on April 5th, 2022, which will be before the first Pro Tour, about a month and a week ahead of that. It'll be in response to the Everfest meta, of which a lot of things have been happening, and it'll be interesting to see what LSS is going to do with this banned and restricted announcement. I'm here to give you my predictions, my thoughts, and my feelings on the current metagame and to see where things could be going. Right off the bat, Bravo star of the show has become a dominant force in the competitive metagame. Starvo, as he likes to be called, or as people like to call him, is the strongest hero in the game at the moment by win results alone. He has almost already reached Living Legend status after only existing in the game for 2 months. He has been very dominant in the competitive landscape, not only due to his amazing ability of being able to give his attacks, dominate, +2, and go again for free, but also his access to the Earth, Ice, Lightning, and Elemental Guardian hero cards, as well as having access to Bravo specializations. Starvo has one of the deepest card pools in the game and access to some of the best cards in the game, period. Which means it's not been a surprise that he's been so competitively powerful and dominant. Starvo, therefore, is looking to be a dominant choice in the Pro Tour meta, and a lot of people are starting to be worried that the Pro Tour will not be able to be all that it can be if it's dominated by Starvo and decks that can beat Starvo. The main reason for this is that Starvo has been crowding out a lot of decks out of the meta with its premier disruption capabilities, as well as its ability to beat aggro decks and most decks that can't stop dominated disruption every turn alongside the Ice Hammer. And the only decks that have really been able to go toe-to-toe with Starvo have been Prism and the Runeblade characters, which have been able to try to out-aggro him over time. So what's going to happen with Starvo? A lot of people have been throwing around a lot of different ideas. One of the ideas that people have been throwing around has been that you are going to see LSS early Living Legend Starvo. Now, this is something that I don't think is going to happen personally, because it would be a very rough situation for LSS to just outright remove a character from the game that has been a cornerstone of the competitive metagame ever since it was released. A lot of people have spent money on the hero, have spent a lot of time testing with and against that hero, and a month before the Pro Tour, LSS really probably does not want to shake up the metagame that hard by completely removing the dominant deck. You know, it'd be interesting to see a Wild West of decks in a format, but for competitive integrity, a lot of people like having to have expectations so that they can plan around it, especially if they are playing Starvo. Personally, I think they are not going to early Living Legend Starvo. I think that does not really solve any issues, and I think that we are more likely going to see some other type of balance change. What might that look like? Well, a lot of people have been suggesting that Oak and Old become an Oldtime specialization. This way, Starvo can't use the very disruptive ability to scramble your opponent's hand with a 10 or 11 dominated attack card to be able to mess up their turn and also reset tempo, especially off of maybe a card like Awakening. The thing is, Oak and Old itself is not an overpowered card. It was never a problem with Oldheim using it, and while, yes, it has Oldheim on the card, and so it would make sense for it to be an Oldheim specialization, the issue that Bravo or Starvo, right, is having is that the Oak and Old is part of the larger problem. Starvo is too consistent at doing what it does, and that if you had set up in your pitch stack an Oak and Old combo with all 3 elements and such, you know, that's fair. A lot of decks, if they pitch stack the perfect 4-card, 5-card hand, should be able to do a lot of work. But the problem is when every turn Starvo's fusing and dominating, and then just happens to raw draw the Oak and Old with the Rainbow and is able to, you know, throw that at you and completely reset the tempo of the game. I do think that an Oak and Old errata, to make it a specialization for Oldheim specifically, would do a lot to slap Oldheim or Starvo down, but it's probably too much. I would not expect to see this change be made, especially because it breaks the symmetry of the other heroes from the same set, that being Lexi and Briar, who also have these pseudo specialization cards, which are, they have their art on them. Maybe it's something like, I think it's Ice Storm or the Blossoming Spellblade. So they're probably not going to do that, in my opinion. Also, again, Oakenold can be blocked by, a red unmovable and 1 card from hand, no matter what character you're playing. So I don't think Oakenold itself is specifically overpowered and needs to be removed from Starvo's arsenal, because it is a good option for him to have. The issue is just that his ability is too flexible throughout the entire game, and that Oakenold can just come out of nowhere and ruin your day. Another suggestion that people have been throwing around is to ban Crown of Seeds. Now, I don't think this is going to happen at all. LSS has been very clear that they want to protect the monetary investment of people into their game, and banning Crown of Seeds has collateral damage with hurting Oldhim players, as well as any Earth Element players in the future. So, also it's a legendary, so I really don't see Crown of Seeds being banned, at least right now for Starvo. I think later on in the life of the game, Crown of Seeds is a very powerful card. It has a very, very powerful play line, especially in defensive strategies, and the fact that it can lead to card advantage if you have 1 resource can be very, very powerful. The thing is that it's not the reason Starvo's super strong, and it was never really a super big problem with Oldhim, because yes, if you have 2 Oldhims fighting each other, and they have Crown of Seeds and the Rampart, and all they have is hammers left in their deck, yeah, the game will never end if they have the Earth D-React, but that was a very rare problem, and I don't think that is going to be really super relevant here to the point of needing to ban Crown of Seeds. Crown of Seeds is, again, not the issue in my opinion. It is simply a enabler for Starvo to have an even higher ceiling than he already would have, naturally. Beyond all that, Starvo himself seems to be the core of the issue. A lot of the cards that he runs in his deck, like Autumn's Touch or Awakening, were never a problem before Starvo existed, and they certainly won't be a problem after he stops existing. So I was looking at Starvo, and I thought that the most elegant solution would be to simply keep his text exactly as it is, and to simply errata the hero to say, at the start of your turn, you may reveal an Earth, Ice, and a Lightning card from your hand. If you do, the next Guardian attack action card with cost 3 or greater you play this turn gets +2, Dominate, and go again. What does this do for the hero in the meta? The first thing it makes you do as a Starvo player is have to re-examine your deck build. A lot of Starvo players have been touting the Control Starvo variant, where they use his immensely deep and high quality card pool to be able to win without relying on the Dominate, without relying on the Rainbow ability. The thing is that it's totally fine for Starvo to hit that Rainbow ability if they, pitch stack it, or once in a blue moon they hit it. The problem is when the Autumn's Touch or the Earth card generally satisfies not only the Earth component of it, but also the attack component. By running all these blue elemental cards, Starvo every turn could swing a Earth card that costs 3 with Go Again and Dominate into a Hammer swing with the Ice active, and then still have a card to arsenal for Crown of Seeds. Starvo could basically do this infinitely until he hit a better combo, such as Oakenold, and then obviously from there he really resets the tempo of the game, and it's very hard to come back for the opponent. By making Starvo need a 4-card hand in order to get value off of his Lightning, Earth, and Ice ability, by making it have to target a Guardian attack action card such as Oakenold, such as Entangle or Crippling Crush, whatever the card is, would make Starvo have to play much more fair, have to rely much more on classic Guardian tools, and would still probably be very, very powerful. But the play line of being able to simply throw an Earth card with Dominate into something else is not going to be available to him, meaning that he can't just hold his whole hand, smack you with damage every turn with impunity. He'd have to actually block sometimes to get full value out of his hand and to set up various things, rather than simply being able to say, I guess my hand's good, Dominate Hammer, Dominate Hammer, Dominate Hammer, and then sometimes throw out these really huge haymakers like Oakenold. So my personal prediction is that Starvo is going to receive an errata, just like Briar did, where Briar got a reduction in the number of Embodiment of Earth tokens that she could make. Starvo will have 1 word added to his hero that will make it harder for him to land his ability onto attacks, but will still keep his ceiling with his best cards. have the minimum impact on collateral damage with other heroes, and will still leave them strong enough to naturally live in Legends out. Beyond that, we have the Runeblade cards, starting with Swarming Gloomveil. If Starvo is hit, which they might not be, no balance changes might even be made at this ban restricted announcement. However, if they ban anything, Runeblade is going to need to get hit as well. Starvo is currently the only thing keeping Runeblades out of the meta, at least out of the very top tables, because the Runeblades need 5-card hands to function at their optimum efficiency, and Starvo has been constantly threatening them with Ice Hammer, with Oakenolds, with Crippling Crushes, you name it. So having Runeblades without Starvo in the meta means that Runeblades are basically going to run amok, and LSS needs to look at some cards to hit preemptively before Runeblade has dominance for yet another format. The first one on the chopping block would be Swarming Gloomveil. Swarming Gloomveil is a very efficient glue piece of card that on its own is unassuming. It's just a 4-attack go again for 0, which we've never seen Runeblades running those before. But it also combos really well with things like Rattlebones, with things like a bunch of their other cards that activate their various abilities, as just a very, very strong attack, especially off of getting it off of Sonata, and threatening tons of Arcane if you don't block it with the armor or cover that breakpoint of 4. Swarming Gloomveil is very powerful, and I could definitely see it receiving a ban at some point in the future, but I personally don't think it's the problem. One of the cards that I do think is a problem is Revelin Runeblood. This card being printed was pretty incredibly scary because for the low price of 0, with Go Again, you could easily create 4 rune chants off the card itself, which is more than read the runes, and all you had to do is play 2 cards on your turn. Oftentimes, this means you could play Rattlebones, pitching a blue, to play Swarming Gloomveil for free, and you're coming in for, however much Go Again, and you've already turned on Revel. You have 1 floating, so you can play Revel. It's your 3rd, 4th card, whatever. And yeah, that's a 3-card combo, right? You can do the Rattlebones, pitching a blue into Revel, and then you have your Viserai trigger as well, and you come in with Rosetta for at least 10 damage, with 8 of that being arcane. So it's pretty incredible to see Revel and Runeblood be printed when that amount of damage is basically unstoppable by most heroes. The beginning of your end phase thing where it destroys all your rune chants is irrelevant for the card. It's so easy for Runeblades to proc this with their Rosetta that Revel and Runeblood rather is just insanely high value for being a card they can run 3 of, search out of their deck, reduces the cost of their other cards. 4 rune chants is so much better than 4 damage that, Nimblism or something, even if it said, if you've played a non-attacking attack this turn, your next attack gains 4 attack power, would still be really insanely good. But this is infinitely better than that. So, it's really just an insanely powerful card, and it's really crazy that LSS printed this after Runeblade had been powerful for so long. They didn't give a lot of as powerful stuff to Brute, for instance. Brute did not get anything near this power level out of Everfest, and we see Runeblade, especially Viserai, running this to great effect. Beyond this, I've been saying since Nationals ended that Rosetta Thorn needs to be banned. I think that this card is grossly overpowered and leads to a lot of no-win scenarios for the non-Runeblade players. And what I mean by that is, for one, all 3 Runeblades run this weapon because it's the best. Runeblades have 5 generic weapons. They have Dread Scythe, they have Nebula Blade, they have Reaping Blade, they have Rosetta, and they used to have even Dusk Blade. However, they removed Dusk Blade for obvious reasons and banned it. Rosetta Thorn is a 1 resource attack that requires a 2-card block. Even if they only have Rosetta itself, if they pitch a blue card, they can easily Rosetta off of a Grasp of the Arcanite. They can easily do Rosetta for 2 physical and 1 arcane, which is a amazing baseline as still a 2-card block off of a blue, even if they haven't played to activate its ability that turn. Rosetta Thorn also has the insane ability of being able to attack for two weird breakpoints of arcane and physical, again for 1 resource, if you've done anything on your turn. Rune Blades are incredibly powerful, they have a ton of options, and the fact that Rosetta is so easy to activate and fits into their cost curve so perfectly is really obnoxious and really too strong. The fact that by pitching, like I said earlier, 1 blue card to play any 2-cost card mixed in with some non-attack actions means that you can finish your turn with Rosetta no problem and just come in for stupid amounts of damage. I think that Rosetta needs to go, but there are other ways you could obviously approach this, and I don't expect them to ban Rosetta at this point because they clearly have shown that they are not wanting to do so. However, I think it is the best ban because Rune Blade already has a 1-attack or 1-cost weapon, that being the Reaping Blade. Reaping Blade specifically is a 3-attack weapon that costs 1 and prevents your opponent from healing if they have more health than you. The thing is that Reaping Blade already is a good replacement for Rosetta. It's a 3-attack weapon for 1. If you need to activate those rune chants off of Revel, or if you need it to fit that math, you already have a 1-cost weapon to attack with. The difference is that Reaping Blade is a 1-card block. It only has 3 attack, there's no arcane. Reaping Blade, therefore, would be a much more fair card in that slot, because while you're still taking a lot of arcane, you can at least, in that grind game scenario, have a better chance at stopping their damage by being able to cover up more of that physical with just a single card. That doesn't excuse Revel and Runeblood, and it doesn't excuse a lot of their other cards, but I think if LSS is trying to be very timid in the way they approach balancing Runeblade, I think a Rosetta ban would be the lowest and least slap on the wrist that they could do, while at least helping see where that lets the meta shake out. However, if they really want to balance Runeblade, if they really want to make Runeblades no longer the dominant class, what they really need to do, in my opinion, is ban Maureen Skies. Now, why ever ban Maureen Skies? Well, there's a couple of main reasons. The first is that it is effectively a mandatory 9-of in every single Runeblade deck. It gives you go again, it gives you extra damage, it gives you pitch, and it helps turn on your hero abilities. For Viserai, this turns on Viserai ability to make more rune chants on your turn. It sets up all your perfect math of being able to play for a 0-cost card, play a Spellblade Assault or something pitching a blue, attack with it, play your Revel and Runeblood, and then finish with Rosetta for a very insane turn. If that attack hits, you get free damage out of the rune chants, which could also reduce the cost of your other attacks and or abilities, such as off of Bloodsheath Skeleton. Maureen Blue even is a blue pitch that does all of this and also can give you 1 extra damage. Let's compare that to a similar card, Lead the Charge. Lead the Charge is a 0-cost red pitch 2-block go again card, and so is Maureen, red 0-cost 2-blocked go again. They both give you effectively an action point, go again, or an action point. But Maureen gives you a free 3 damage as a red, and then free 2, and then free damage, compared to Lead the Charge, which is a very playable card, and Maureen just strictly outclasses it. And it's also a Runeblade card, so it also makes rune chants when you play it. If your Viserai is active, while also helping you get towards your embodiment of Lightning token. Maureen, on its own, could easily be replaced by Lead the Charge in almost every single Runeblade list, and it would basically be the same card. For instance, Viserai. A lot of Viserai's attacks cost 2 or greater. Spellblade Assault, Rune Flash, Runic Reclamation, Ninth Blade, you name it. Lead the Charge in those cases would be effectively the same card as Maureen for the purposes of playing out your turn. However, you would have to play around the color of your Lead the Charge and couldn't just willy-nilly play whatever you wanted. And also, it would reduce the ceiling that Viserai has of just creating all these free resources of the rune chants. It's become very apparent that if they're going to print cards like Revel and Runeblood, which just pump out free rune chants to the point that it's so easy to play your Ninth Blades or your Amplify the Arknights or your Rune Flashes with effective impunity, that getting to make even more off of Maureen's is just insult to injury. And Runeblades have a replacement for this card. They could easily swap it out for Lead the Charge. In almost every case, it would be about the same result, just a slightly less powerful version. That's why I think that if they truly want to help start balancing Rune Blades, they need to get rid of this card and probably Rosetta, because both of those have effective equivalents that would help trim their power without outright removing something like Skeleton or Sonata or any number of other cards that are core to making Rune Blades have the identity that they have. So as far as Rune Blade balance, I think that would be the way to go. I think I made myself clear on that. But if Rune Blades are nerfed and are no longer the top dog of the meta, after the past year or however long they have been, well, then obviously Prism becomes overpowered, right? Well, probably. I mean, Prism is very strong, and with the Everfest cards that were printed, especially the Spectras, Prism has become very uninteractive and very, very powerful. And while she could struggle against aggro decks, if you help balance the best aggro decks, being the Rune Blades, into a point where Prism can have a chance into them, then Prism kind of has no bad matchups. So what do you do to Prism in order to keep the metagame balanced? Well, first thing you could do is look at banning some blue Spectras. Would you ban Passing Mirage, for instance? I don't think they will. Passing Mirage requires you to have 2 cards in your hand to get value off of it, and sometimes it doesn't even give you value, because if you couldn't pop the card anyway, it's just a 1-attack weapon that you could mostly ignore. It's a good card, don't get me wrong, but it's not ban-worthy because of how many things have to go right for it to even get you value at all. Moving on, Pierce Reality is in a similar position. Pierce Reality is very powerful, but it requires you to have multiple cards to get value off of it, and has counterplay by being able to pop the Phantasm. Obviously, as you snowball multiple auras, you can get around that issue, but because this doesn't have Go Again, and because all the blue Spectras don't have Go Again, you don't get the benefit out of these cards the turn you play them. Your opponent has a chance to remove them, so I think these are both very balanced Spectras. You might say, oh, well, what about banning Fractal Replication? That card looks pretty insane. It's like, no, well, actually, no. Fractal Replication is a good card, but it is not ban-worthy. It requires a lot of things to go right, and at the moment, Prisms aren't even running this card, really. So that's not going to fix Prism and prevent aggro from, having a chance to come out of the meta and having control or a Prism just dominate the meta. So if Fractal Replication is not the issue, maybe Mirage Metamorph's the issue. Well, also, still no. Mirage Metamorph is a good card, but the opponent always has the choice of how they handle it. The opponent can decide to pop it if they need to preserve the damage and don't care about the aura. They can have the interesting situations of, if they don't have an aura at all, do I pop it because maybe they'll flash one in, or do I see that they literally can't, and then now I can pop it for free. Alternatively, you can block it without popping it, or you can just let the damage hit you. So I think Metamorph is a very interesting card and is not ban-worthy because it's just raw damage. And again, it has a lot of decision points that are not the reason that Prism is in a dominant position at the time. However, Shimmers of Silver is a very good card. You can play this, and once you get back to your own turn, you can attack for 2. That's pretty good, but it's not necessarily going to run away with the game. If you have multiple Shimmers out and you can double aura, yes, your Spectras can get out of hand, and Shimmers is one of the better ones, but it also requires you to get value out of it by getting back to your own turn while still controlling it. If your opponent is trimming your auras and is able to keep you down, you won't be able to get a lot of value out of Shimmers over time. So Shimmers, in my opinion, is not an overpowered card and would not need to go for any particular reason for Prism. However, if Prism needs to receive any balance changes, the balance change that I would say would be a totally fine choice would be to ban Haze Bending. Haze Bending is a 0-cost Spectra that lets you make a Spectral Shield token whenever a Illusionist non-aura you control is destroyed, or non-token aura you control is destroyed. It's a blue and blocks 2. Haze Bending effectively is always worth a minimum of 3 HP, because if your opponent attacks it with a Kadachi, let's say, you stop 1 damage to your face, you get a Spectral Shield token, which effectively heals you for 1, and that Spectral Shield token can attack on your next turn. So that's 1 damage to your opponent. Stopping 2 damage to yourself and dealing 1 to your opponent for a 0-cost card that has the potential to snowball out of control is immensely powerful. And I think that because you don't have to wait for your own turn to get value out of this card, I think that Haze Bending, if something needs to go for Prism, would be the first on the chopping block because of its ability to help cement a board presence while also being 0 cost. If LSS thought that haze bending was not enough of a ban, I think the only other card that Prism would need to see banning to receive proper balance would be Ode to Wrath. Ode to Wrath is a win more card. You have to have a board state or threaten to build a quick board state to get value off of this card. However, while it's very powerful and can snowball games out of control, it does still cost 4. You still have to have yellows in your pitch to get go again, and so it requires a lot of things to go right for you in order to actually get you value. So I don't think Ode to Wrath needs to be banned. I think that it is a good card, but classes need good cards. I do think that if Prism needs bans, though, haze bending would be the first on the chopping block, and beyond that, they could probably see where it goes from there. Another thing that I would like to mention is a lot of people have been saying that Luminaris needs to be banned. One, I don't think that's going to happen. The first reason I think it's not going to happen is that Luminaris specifically is a weapon for Prism that is literally the only playable weapon that Prism can use effectively. Iris of Reality is unplayably bad, and if Prism didn't have Luminaris, Prism would become the worst hero in the game overnight and would basically be unplayable until new sets were released. It'd be effectively like banning the hero. Iris of Reality just is too expensive, doesn't do anything, doesn't synergize with her own cards, and would just be a complete overstep, in my opinion. On top of that, Prism was never a meta problem before Everfest. And I don't even think she's a problem now. Yes, Prism's strong now, but it's mainly because Starvo itself is a good matchup for Prism. And since Starvo crowds out most of the meta, Prism helps to crowd out the other half, and they kind of both work together in that way. Prism was effectively a non-factor during the Briar meta until in New Zealand, where the characters that people had been running shifted away from Briar because Oldheim was preying on all the Briars, that a Prism player was able to dodge Briars enough to feast on all of the Guardians in the top tables and then take it and convert it to a win. Very similar thing happened in Las Vegas, where Prism won the Calling, where she was able to tech almost entirely to beat Chain and faced a lot of Chain and was able to fatigue Chain consistently and win out in the end of the day. The Luminaris was not the main cause of that. It was a defensive strategy that wasn't even attacking very much into Chain back then, and even now, Luminaris itself is not responsible for the reason that Prism is strong. It's the Spectras combined with Luminaris. So if we needed to keep Prism playable, you can't ban Luminaris, and you would need to simply ban the best auras to prevent Prism from hitting those critical masses and snowballing the game out of control, which would mainly be haze bending and Ode to Wrath to prevent them from having that snowballing ceiling, but still having access to chip damage and to make all of her attacks playable. But that's going to do it for now. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the new banned and restricted list. Please let me know what you think is going to happen in the comments, or if you think that my analysis is off, and I guess we'll see what happens. So thank you again for watching, and have a good day. Peace. Thank you so much for watching. This video and videos like it are made possible thanks to viewers like you. If you enjoyed the video, please consider leaving a like, comment, or consider subscribing for more flesh and blood content. Additionally, I'd like to give a special shout out to all of the patrons who help make this video content possible, starting with the Dreamweaver tier patron, Tara Blitz. Thank you so much for your continued support and helping make this channel thrive. Moving on, we've got the Sentinel tier patrons, which is the current tier, which allows coaching sessions to be scheduled with me to talk about your flesh and blood needs. We have Bon, David Romish, Exploding Potatoes, Frederick, Lundevic, Jacob, Joe Gianoli, Michael Lynch, P13, TR2U, Ronnie Martin, Tim J, and Todd Stewart. Thank you all so much for your support. It means the world, and I could not do this without you guys. Moving on, we have the Herald tier patrons. Thank you to everyone who helped support the channel on the Herald tier, and hope you enjoy your access to deck techs, strategy, the patron community, and all the other stuff that comes along with that. Starting with Alex Enslow, Andy Lee, Callum Bousfield, Carlos Carrero, Christopher D. Bates, Douglas DeJong, Ike Vic Hagen, Eric Borg, Francesco Lorenzi, Henrik, Jake Kitsos, Jake Arms, Jake Bennett Dwyer, Joel Wilhelm, John N. Downey Jr., Michael Stowell, Moonshaker, Muskrat Tuck, Nicholas Astner, Oxalati, Raymond Scott, Starman Jones, Ty Craig, Valentine N., Will Fry, and Zombie Z. Finally, for the Spectral Shield tier patrons, we've got Andrew Good, Bryce Morgan, Drew Wagners, Rachel, and Sarazar. Thank you all so much for all of your support, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.